So welcome to all of you, and thanks for joining us for our briefing, Embrace AI for Nonprofit Impact with Rachel Kimber. We are recording this presentation, and we will have a Q&A session at the end of Rachel's presentation. The recording will be publicly available on YouTube for those who are interested but are unable to join us today. We will stop the recording before the Q&A session at the end. However, we will be taking questions throughout the presentation. Please use the raise hand function or drop your question in the chat. If there's a question that you would like to ask but want to remain anonymous, we ask that you just direct message myself or Anaya Brown. Wave, Anaya. Thank you. Okay. Any discussion of it in New Jersey cannot begin without consideration of land and labor. Land and labor acknowledgements are tangible political admissions of the ongoing violence of the settler colonial state and our own implicit participation in it. We will start with the land acknowledgement. Anaya?
Thank you, Maria. We read this land acknowledgement, which is offered by the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape Tribal Nation for those who seek to honor the Lenape people and their territory preceding an event in Lenapehoking, also known as New Jersey. The land upon which we gather is part of the traditional territory of the Lenni Lenape called Lenapehoking. The Lenape people lived in harmony with one another upon this territory for thousands of years. During the colonial era and early federal period, many were removed west and north, but some also remain among the continuing historical tribal communities of the region. The Nanticoke Lenni Lenape Tribal Nation, the Ramapo Lenape Nation, the Powhatan Lenape Nation, the Nanticoke of Millsboro, Delaware, and the Lenape of Cheswell, Delaware. We acknowledge the Lenni Lenape as the original people of this land and their continuing relationship with their territory. In our acknowledgement of the continued presence of the Lenape people in their homeland, we affirm the aspiration of the great Lenape chief Tamanin that there be harmony between the indigenous people of this land and the descendants of the immigrants to this land, as long as the rivers and the creeks flow and the sun, moon, and stars shine.
This labor acknowledgement is offered by Dr. T.J. Stewart, Assistant Professor of Higher Education and Student Affairs at Iowa State University. We must acknowledge that much of what we know of this country today, including its culture, economic growth, and development throughout history and across time, has been made possible by the labor of enslaved Africans and their ascendants who suffered the horror of the transatlantic trafficking of their people, chattel slavery, and Jim Crow. We are indebted to their labor and their sacrifice, and we must acknowledge the tremors of that violence throughout the generations and the resulting impact that can still be felt and witnessed today. For us at Gathering Ground, we read these statements to make visible what has been invisible to many people, particularly people racialized as white. We acknowledge these historical truths of theft of people and land, enslavement, forced migration, and forced labor. And though this is our history, this must not be our future. We at Gathering Ground are committed to working in community and constant dialogue with all of you in disrupting this fatalistic view and create new norms and new structures for a more equitable world. Before I turn it over to our special guest speaker that I know you're all eager to hear from today, I want to just tell you a little bit about Gathering Ground, especially since we have some first-timers with us today. We are a multiracial, multicultural, multi-generational, and socioeconomically diverse movement of people committed to taking action that creates thriving and equitable communities. Gathering Ground offers a variety of programs designed to address systemic issues and empower individuals to become agents of positive change. From community engagement initiatives to collaborative learning experiences, each program, like today's briefing, is developed and crafted with the needs of our community in mind and with the overarching goal of cultivating a culture of equity and justice. Join us, if you can, on May 13th and May 14th at 9:30 a.m. for the next two workshops in our Elevating Equity programming, our Racial Equity Training Series with our guest presenter, Whitney Parnell of Service Never Sleeps. Tuesday, May 13th, our workshop is titled White Supremacy 101, and on Wednesday, May 14th, Bias and Microaggressions. Please be sure to check out our program calendar for upcoming workshops and events. I want to quickly recognize the people who've been working on today's briefing. The team at Gathering Ground, Casey O'Brien, our Director of Programming, Anaya Brown, our Communications Associate, and Alyssa Prevost, our Operations Associate, who's not with us today. This work is made possible with the support of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, the Grunin Foundation, and PSCG. I want to sincerely thank each of you for making time in your busy schedules to be with us today. And I hope this is one of many programs that you will be joining us. I think Casey said this at the very beginning, but in true Gathering Ground style, our programs are conversational. So we will be helping to facilitate. If you have questions, again, please raise your hand and we will get to you and try to answer as many questions as possible. Again, if you want to ask your questions but want to remain anonymous, just send a direct message myself or Anaya. Just going to say a few words about Rachel and then I'll turn it over to her. We are so excited to have Rachel with us today. Rachel M. Kimber is a Tech for Good educator, visionary nonprofit strategist, and compassionate leader transforming philanthropy through equity, innovation, and digital strategy. As managing director at Full Circle Impact Solutions, Rachel's work centers on creating meaningful change in the social sector, empowering organizations to bridge people, technology, and purpose. With a 20-plus year career spanning grant making, social justice advocacy, and strategic innovation, she's collaborated globally to uplift marginalized voices and advance modern, inclusive practices in philanthropy and nonprofit organizations. You can find more information on Rachel's website, rachelkimber.com, and fullcircleimpact.org, and those will be dropped in the chat shortly. Okay. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel. Rachel, thanks for being with us today.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. I know it's hard to go anywhere without hearing about this tool called artificial intelligence. And so what we're going to be doing today is understanding this tool's relevance to our work. And so without further ado, why do I have the privilege of sharing this knowledge with you? And it's because as an undergraduate, I studied cognitive science. And that means that I really deeply explored the understanding how humans and the human brain and the mind work, what we understand, what we can document about dreams, about innovation, about creativity, about the neural networks that fire in our brain when we are doing a math equation, and then the end goal of trying to simulate that in a technology tool. And so we're going to hear a lot more about that simulation, but I think we all understand the complexity of our brain and the attempts to create a simulation in a tool comes with some challenges. And so I have a really deep background in understanding what those challenges are as a cognitive scientist. I have also spent 20 years in this sector, and that means that I have come through philanthropy, I've worked at public charity, I have bridged with nonprofits to make sure that we're getting the resources, the tools, the infrastructure that we need to drive social impact and mission-driven work. I also call myself a technology futurist. That means I enjoy looking into where are these trends going to take us? What's next? What do we need to be thinking about? And so these are the lenses that I'm bringing to this conversation today. As an executive, I have seen the power privilege dynamics. I understand the promise and peril of this tool, and I'm doing the best I can to drive inclusion and making sure that we all have an opportunity to understand, inform, and drive. And so what that looks like today is we're going to kick off with a Slido poll to kind of level set where are we in our usage of this tool. And then I'm going to talk for a little while about some of the language that we use to talk about the tool and some of the power privilege dynamics that we're stepping into. We'll do another Slido poll after I have given you all of the peril. We're going to do kind of a pulse check with how are we feeling about this. And then I'm going to take us into what do some of those cases look like? And we're going to start exploring how does this artificial intelligence understanding apply to our work. And then we're going to close with a demo of ChatGPT and a brief discussion of what does it look like to do this work responsibly. And so this is our first Slido poll. Casey is going to drop in the chat the link. You can also, use your phone to access this poll. And what this poll is asking is, are you using AI? And this is just level setting around what is your experience? What does it look like? And so, Casey, if you're able to get that into the chat, please let me know, folks, if you're having any trouble accessing this poll. And I'm just going to flip over to the actual poll responses. Anyone having any trouble with the poll access? Are you able to click on that link, John, and navigate to this screen? I'm not seeing votes come in. So let me make sure, copy that joining link.
My screen is just jumping around. Copy.
Let's see. So if you click on that link that just went into the chat, you should be able to access this poll.
All right, I think we're getting there. Now I'm at, no, I'm seeing the Supremacy Never Sleeps for next week or 2 weeks, but
You might need to scroll a little bit further down in your chat.
okay, follow Rachel Kimber.
Yeah,
Keep going.
Go all the
All
way
right.
to the end, and then
Got
you'll
it.
see the link. Yep.
I think I got it.
Great.
So some of you may need to come back to that QR code. So I'll make sure that that's up for you. And the question is, are you using AI? And I've broken it into 4 different categories because some folks are playing with it personally, right? They might have a chat with their, Chat GPT tool about, an interview that they have upcoming and they want to prepare for it. And that might be a personal use case. You might be using it professionally occasionally. And so occasionally that means you're dabbling, you're getting in there. Some folks have been using it extensively, right? And that means, it's a regular practice that they're bringing to their work, and then not at all. And that's also a totally fine answer for the poll purposes. And so if you've got that link,
all of the above also.
All of the above. And I made you have to answer one. And so that's how I did the poll settings. But this is just to kind of get your mind jogged around which bucket does it feel like I fit into. I'm not seeing immediate responses, and we're not going to reflect on this too much.
Rachel, I
Let's
can see them. So if you want me to read what
Oh,
they
you can.
are.
Yeah, let me refresh. There we go. That's just the good old internet. And so even a technologist bumps up against little issues sometimes. So I don't want any of you to get frustrated or feel like you can't, because even those of us who call ourselves technologists and futurists have moments like that where just refresh my screen and look, there are the answers. So what this is helping us see is that it is for professional tasks occasionally is moving to the front here. The reason this is interesting is because a number of months ago, I did this same survey for another group, and we had similar responses. And we have people using these tools, large language models or other AI tools, in a professional space. The reason this gets risky is because that means we're probably using professional data. And if we don't have guardrails or rules around how we're using our data, we could accidentally jeopardize someone's privacy preferences, right? And so that's why, thank you for being at this training. Thank you for becoming more familiar with what is in bounds and what's out of bounds, because people are using this tool for professional tasks. We need to acknowledge that it's happening, and we need to take some steps to make sure we're keeping ourselves safe as we start dipping our toes in. So thank you for doing that first poll with me. I'm also going to highlight that we are using AI every day. If you said not at all, your text message in your phone is already predicting with an artificial intelligence lens what that next word might be. When you're getting Netflix recommendations, that's powered by an algorithm. When Spotify is suggesting a new band you might want to listen to or a song you want to try out, or when YouTube is guessing the next video you're going to want to watch, all of those tools are powered by data inputs that become an output going through an algorithm. And we're going to talk more about that. Because we have so much content to cover, you will get this slide deck. You can read about how AI is touching human resources, healthcare, and finance. The thing to understand is business transformation is happening. Our for-profit partners are already reinventing the way they do work. There was just an announcement from an organization called Shopify. I don't use them. I'm not that familiar with them as a tool, but the CEO came out and said, if you are presenting a project plan as one of my employees, AI must be part of it. You must be using artificial intelligence, or I do not want to review that project plan. So that's how pervasive this has become, and rather quickly. So it's important to me to make sure that we're using similar, same, as close to as possible language, because that's how we communicate and understand what are we talking about. And so artificial intelligence, as I pointed to, is a simulation of human intelligence. It is acting as if it is doing reasoning and problem solving, perception, and natural language understanding like we do. It's really statistics. That's why it's a simulation. It's logic. It's doing if then, if then. This is why machine learning for self-driving cars has had some issues when the self-driving car is coming up to a trailer, a tractor trailer on its side. The car has problem solving and reasoning for a tractor trailer that looks like a tractor trailer. The machine learning that the self-driving car was put through didn't know what to do when it saw a tractor trailer turned on its side. This is a real accident that happened. The self-driving car drove into the side laying tractor trailer because we didn't teach it what a side laying tractor trailer looks like. The self-driving car didn't know what to do. So this is where the simulation piece is really important to understand. It can only simulate based on what it knows. Machine learning is where we take that information and we start to explain to the tool, the machine, what it is we expect it to do, right? If you see a tractor trailer, avoid it. But if it's turned on its side, we didn't teach it what to do in those circumstances. So it didn't respond appropriately. The self-driving car did not respond appropriately. The next piece of artificial intelligence tool we have is natural language processing, NLP. What is that? That's when you talk to Alexa. That's when you talk to Siri. My children know they're not very smart. And so our simulation of human language is still limited. Right now, the newest Apple release is facing some frustration. That for-profit company isn't able to launch its natural language processing update with its new iPhone, and they're feeling frustrated about that. Back to the machine learning, back to the simulation, right? They didn't get there in time. Their natural language processing and their tool Siri is still a pain in the butt to try and converse with. But it's getting better. If any of you have played with ChatGPT on your phone, you're able to just talk into ChatGPT and tell it what you need it to do. So natural language processing is moving rather quickly, incredible functionality. And that brings us to deep learning. And so that's what we're doing when we're layering all of these pieces for a self-driving car to be able to function in the world, right? It's recognizing patterns, it's recognizing images, it's taking in, as we do with our five senses, all of this information. And so we're calling the ability for a machine to do this a neural network. I call that inaccuracy because we as humans have these incredibly complex neural networks that when we smell hand sanitizer, for example, it might take us back to that moment at the beginning of the pandemic where we bought, the case of hand sanitizer, right? That just the whiff of it takes us back to that moment. That's not necessarily how a machine works. And so that's the beauty of our brains and the deep learning we do and our neural networks, but that is the shortcoming of the tool. The shortcoming of the tool is based because it's an algorithm, right? The basis of these tools is a set of procedures. It's a recipe. You put these things in, you're going to get this out. And so that's the limits of the logic. So I just wanted to walk us through some of these terms. It's dense, it's not easy, but hopefully I gave you a little bit of grounding in what these words mean. Because then we move to what do these words do, right? So what these words do is we have the training data. Large language models, ChatGPT, Claude, their training data was the entire internet. So I like to say ChatGPT ate the internet. It consumed everything that was on the internet. Is there bias there? Who wrote the internet? Whose information's on the internet? What language is the internet primarily existing in, right? So we already have some issues with our training data. It's not going away. But what we can do is after we get those results, we can look at them and say, I know that the data was biased. I bet this result is not inclusive of this population. Let me go a little bit further. Let me ask that question. Let me say, if the community is living in the South Bronx, would you give me a different answer? And you can start to see the bias and then mitigate for it, right? So if it's giving you a different answer, you can decide, is this moving in the right direction, or is this moving in a direction that is going to harm, hurt, create inequities? But that happens at the result moment. If you have training data at your organization and you want to help an algorithm understand what you need the output to be, you also need to start with clean training data. So if your data is inaccurate, it's incomplete, your results are going to show that. And so this image is just to help you understand what is happening in the mechanics of a large language model, of artificial intelligence. And this is what it looks like in a painfully slow illustration. So when you tell a 3-year-old a knock-knock joke, they generally get it right away, right? They're telling knock-knock jokes and driving you crazy within 5 minutes. This was Janelle Shane's research on how painful and how long it took to teach an artificial intelligence tool, a large language model, a knock-knock joke. And this illustrates what that logic looks like and why it's so slow, because it's literally going letter by letter, trying to figure out, is this the right answer? Is this what you wanted? Does this match the logic? Right? And so this was the training. This is what the tool had to go through in order to be able to do something we consider so simple, tell a knock-knock joke. So this is why AI is super, super powerful, but also a big engine that has climate implications, right? This is what resources it took, the time it took to train the tool. So these are considerations that we need to keep in mind as we are deciding how do we bring this tool into our ecosystem. Oops, and I zoomed in there. Another definition that is really important to sit with as we talk about, is our data complete, accurate, and ready to predict future events? If our data is not ready to do that predictive work, if our data can't determine the difference between a Chihuahua and a blueberry muffin, we shouldn't be making predictions. Our data is not complete. Our tool has not been trained, and we need to go back to that algorithm and make sure that it can answer these questions. Generative AI, which is where we're going to spend most of our conversation, is taking something that exists in the world, right? Your notes, an image, a framework, and saying, I want to make it better, or I want to analyze it in this way, or can you create that? But it's taking things that already exist in the world. It's not making a prediction about who is going to be impacted by the criminal justice system, who might need educational supports in 5 years, right? Our data is flawed. And so it's going to point to certain populations where that data easily points to. The data can be racist, the data can be sexist, the data can be ageist. And these are things that we need to watch out for. And that's why it's better to stay with generative AI until you are confident that your data is capable of making predictions that are not going to harm the communities that you are here to care for. And then finally, no matter what you're doing with AI, it does not replace you. And so your leadership, your judgment, and your equity lens is what is required to take all of the knowledge from the internet and distill it down to something useful for a social impact organization. Not impossible. And the closer you stay to what I call your zone of genius, the less likely you're going to end up with information that you can't decipher. The example I like to give here is I was chatting with somebody prior to the NBA draft last year, and they happened to be a journalist for ESPN. It's like, let me show you ChatGPT. It's really cool. He's like, sure, show me. And I'm like, I bet you I could draft an article for you. And so on my phone, I say, draft an article about the NBA draft and, make it timely and exciting and maybe a little funny. ChatGPT spits out this beautiful article seconds later. And I turn to the journalist and I'm like, I cannot verify any of this. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if these are real basketball players. I don't know if these are actually team names that connect to the actual cities, right? I don't know anything. ChatGPT just spit out this beautiful article. I can't do anything with it. It's way too far away from my zone of genius. So the closer you stay to fundraising, development, marketing, whatever it is that your zone of genius is. Another example is video editing. There's a really great tool called Descript. You can edit videos. It's fantastic. I'm not a great video editor, so I can get in there and I can play and I can make things happen, but it's still subpar quality. It's not professional. It's not something I would go out and say, hey, great, I'm a video editor now. It would take the same amount of time and energy to become expert with the AI tool as it would have taken to become expert with, I don't know, Adobe, Paint Shop or whatever, tools we've had to learn in the past. Stay close to your zone of genius. You're going to have fewer problems with hallucinations, with fact checking. And when you do need to fact check, there's this really fantastic tool out of Stanford called Storm.Stanford. Feel free to check it out. It's beyond Snopes. It's beyond any of the other fact checkers that I've seen out there. And so if you need a very rigorous PhD level deep dive before you push out that communication to your constituents, this is a good place to go and check and make sure it's accurate. Even if AI says so, you might want to check it. Even if it's close to your zone of genius, you might want to make sure because it's your leadership and your judgment and your equity lens that is driving these conversations.
Rachel, we've got just one question, one moment of clarification in the chat.
Yes.
So the question is, so does generative AI avoid data bias and other data risks?
It's less risky. And the word that we're going to sit with, let me see if I can go backwards here for you, is predicting. If we're making predictions and the data is biased, it's going to give us a biased prediction, right? The data knows that young Black men end up in the criminal system with greater, numbers than, Hispanic or white or Chinese, whatever the other demographic is. And so it's going to give you an answer that aligns with that bias because that's what the machine knows. So that's where we have to be really careful with predictive, because even if your data, your personal repository of, not the internet, but your own data, you may not have been attentive to that survey question is very ableist, right? And so now you're skewing your own understanding of your data into an ableist lens because you didn't realize you hadn't been inclusive. You didn't realize that you had left out that slice. Another is indigenous data, right? There isn't much of that data out there. How do we attend to that population and their needs if it doesn't exist? So I wouldn't want to make a prediction about what do those communities need if I don't have the data to accurately make that prediction. And so that's where predicting can get tricky. If we're generating, I would like to create a work plan to go into these Indigenous communities and learn more and create a survey that is unbiased and inclusive and uses, appropriate language. ChatGPT is great at that. It can help you mitigate bias. But if you're not attentive to it, it can accelerate and harm some of the communities that we're trying to care for and support. Did that answer the question a little bit? It's naughty. It's definitely a naughty topic. And also the difference between generative and predictive, there is no hard line between the two, right? We can start kind of trending in a predictive direction. It's language that we as humans created to understand that there is a boundary. There is a different approach between generating something, it already exists in the world, we're creating something, versus predicting and making a decision about what a community needs or doesn't need. The way predictive AI has been used to harm people is in human resources, for example. You've taken too many sick days, you're using the insurance plan heavily, we need to make some cuts, it looks like your name came up. Ouch. That's not a great use of predictive, right? Or we're going to need to make some cuts in the coming year. You know, give me a list of employees. Let's predict who's going to underperform and who we can get rid of by December. Or in finance, who's eligible for that loan, right? So this is also going into the slide that we're looking at right now. People management, it can be used for good. Hey, you need some support. You're not doing well in this area. It looks like you know, you're struggling with public speaking. Let's get you a training. Let's support you. Let's show up for you. Or in fintech, here's the algorithm. You do not meet these qualifications, you do not get the loan. As opposed to a relationship based where you've got 3 of the 5 things. Do we have a little bit of wiggle room? Right? That's how things have worked previously. Now we're running everything through an algorithm. You're either in or you're out. You either get the job or you don't. And that's based on what the tool decides. It's cutting out some of the human judgment. And we have to be really careful as we are allowing the machine to provide insight, to help with decision making. We need to be really clear, what is that algorithm doing, so that we can help advise on where those problems are. And that's why we can't be left out of the conversation. If we're sitting on the sidelines and we're using for-profit tools, it's becoming more and more likely that those algorithms are not going to meet our very inclusive needs. And if you have not watched this documentary, Coded Bias, I highly recommend, because if you are new to the artificial intelligence conversation and some of the concerns about bias, Dr. Joy Buolamwini does a fantastic job in sharing her own lived experience and illustrating some of the peril of this moment that we're in as far as algorithmic justice. And so she now is hosting the Algorithmic Justice League, because algorithms can either promote justice or harm justice. So the Algorithmic Justice League is something that she developed after creating this documentary. 2 quick stories about Dr. Joy Buolamwini. She was one of the first people to sound the alarm bell about the bias that is built into our artificial intelligence tools. She was the person who was at MIT as a young digital artist about 20 years ago when I was at school. And she was sitting down at her computer. She's all ready to do her graphic digital art. And for some reason, the tool that she's using is having trouble reading her face. She has black skin. It's not easy for this tool to see her. And so she's getting very frustrated. She's got an art project deadline and she's, you know, having problems. It happens to be around Halloween. One of her friends gives her one of those creepy white Freddy Krueger Halloween masks. And for some reason, she's sitting down at her computer. She puts it on her face, and lo and behold, the machine can now read the features better than it could with just her black skin. That's bias. That's a problem. And so she realized that and sounded the alarm bell and went on to produce this documentary, Coded Bias. She also brings an incredible illustration about how surveillance technology will impact the most marginalized first. And so there was a community in Brooklyn where someone had decided it would be a good idea to put cameras in and use face recognition to decide who's allowed in the building, who's not, to track, you know, gang activity, whatever it is. And it was a marginalized community, right? Like they don't have a lot of advocacy power. And so they did come together and say, we don't want this tool. We don't want to be surveyed. We don't want this. And they were able to push back and create change. But that's my call to all of you, is to recognize that these tools can be very problematic, and that I'm not the only person saying they're going to hurt, and they are hurting the most marginalized first. And that's why we need to show up. That's why we need to be part of these conversations. Just the privilege of being here on this call means that we have the privilege to support folks who don't know. So that's my call to action for you all, is keep learning, keep exploring, because this tool is going to change the way we work and the way we engage with each other. And if we care about social impact, we might want to make sure that ROI and return on investment aren't the only people driving this conversation. Okay. Next slide. Why is not going? Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to stop sharing for a minute because this is a good pause point, and just see if there's any questions, any concerns, anything coming up for you all that you want to sit with before we start going into some of the applications for the nonprofit space.
While folks are thinking about questions, there was one a little bit earlier from Darren. Darren, do you want to ask your question? Do you want me to read it?
No. So I'll ask it. So, like I know large learning models like ChatGPT, and we just mentioned on the call, they use all of the data on the internet, and you don't know. You have to be very careful, and a lot of it might be biased. Are there any LLMs that train on data that is more closely scrutinized? Let me put it that way, so that when you ask, and then if there are, like if you had in rank order, like which are the ones that take more care to make sure that the data that they train the LLM with is data that's, less biased. I don't know if that's too, broad or too general a
No,
question to ask.
it's a fantastic question. And I'm like, oh, Darren, I think you just created a little research project because I don't think there is a ranking. I think all of the tools ate the internet, right? So Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, you name it. If they are a large language model that is publicly available, that's the data that it consumed. The one differentiator is perplexity. And what's different about perplexity is that that particular platform went behind paywalls. So information, for example, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, right? Data that the other tools did not have access to because they were behind paywalls. Perplexity decided to go ahead and figure out a way to get behind them and use that data. So they're currently engaged in litigation with the New York Times, right? Not a good move, not a good look. And so my ethics say I use it occasionally. It's not my favorite tool, right? I think there were better ways to go about getting data without needing to, break people's trust. Stanford Storm, Jerry's got a question on that one. I have only used it a couple times. It is free to access. It is built by Stanford. And so these questions about can you validate it? I would imagine so if Stanford has built it. And is it using AI? I believe so. Again, I've done a very short demo of it. I would need to dig a little bit deeper. I bring it to you as something to check out, especially when you are pushing information out to your constituents to make sure it's rock solid before you blast that this thing happened, because that's the wonderful thing that AI can do. It can accelerate, but we have to slow down and still be thoughtful. And so that fact checking step should always be there. I'm actually teaching my son. He was watching YouTube videos and learning about who knows what. And I was like, well, how do you know it's true? He's like, oh, well, I Googled it. And I was like, okay, so you have the guy on YouTube saying it, and then you Google, very good, I'm proud of you, 9 years old. Did you check to make sure that the same guy who did the YouTube video didn't write the article that you Googled? Right? So like baby steps in fact checking. Stanford Storm takes you like PhD level. So if you're going to blast something out to your constituents using AI, because you can do it so much faster, just make sure you pause and fact check. That's kind of the takeaway there. Stanford Storm is a fantastic tool. It's probably a lot more than you need on the day-to-day. But again, there's a lot of information out there right now. I want you all to have the best tools to fact check.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to bring that slide deck back up, and we're going to start moving through some of the nonprofit use cases. So I spent the first kind of half hour-ish grounding us in what are the terms, how does this thing work, what are some of the considerations we need to be thinking about. Is anyone feeling uncertain before we go into how do we use this in our daily work? Okay. Sing out if there is anything that you feel was not, sat with long enough or still feels unclear. And I am bringing that deck. Yep.
Yeah. Is it, do all the AI platforms say we're generative or we're predictive, or how would you know?
They can do, most of them can do both. It's depending on what you're asking them to do. And let me ground you in the way I talk about the AI tools is they are really smart summer interns. Really smart, like just graduated from Harvard, brilliant. You can pick Harvard, you can pick Princeton, you can pick Yale. They're all really, really smart. They're all very capable. They don't know your work. They don't know your writing style. They don't know the nonprofit sector very well, right? And so that's the guidance that you need to give to the tool to bring it along with you on the learning journey. I just recently started joking that my ChatGPT is now a first-year professional, right? It graduated from summer internship to now it writes like me. It thinks like me, right? It's come a long way in its first year. And so I can trust it a little bit more, right? I've stayed in my zone of genius. If I start asking it things that it's unfamiliar with, it might get confused, but it understands I like tables. You'll see when we start doing our demo, it usually pops up a table at some point because I have told it I love a good table. Bullet points, it tends to, keep things succinct and clear for you. If you don't like that, you're just like, hey, little summer intern, I hate bullet points. Please stop using them, right? So it's really working with it, and I don't want to make it any more human than it needs to be. But if you do think about it like a summer intern, you bring it along on the journey. And so back to the generative predictive question, what are you asking it to do? Are you asking it to predict how many people are going to show up at your spring gala? That's a prediction. Are you asking it to generate marketing material to invite people to the spring gala? Right? So you're asking it to do two different things. And that's also where predictive is okay, right? That's not scary. You're not hurting your communities. You're just saying, I want to make sure I have enough seats or a big enough venue, right? So based on the last 3 years of galas, how many should we plan for this year? Right? So that's a safe use of prediction. But generative, even safer, right? Just generate me some marketing material, generate a checklist, generate a framework, generate a strategy, right? It's just creating things that already exist in the world and often based on your data, right? So if you have a strategic plan, your nonprofit just spent months and months and months coming together around a strategic plan. Now you need to give marching orders to the staff. You could take that strategic plan. You don't want anyone to know that it's Gathering Ground strategic plan. Take out Gathering Ground, change it to Nonprofit A. Nonprofit A's strategic plan gets put into ChatGPT, and you say, can you help me build a 12-month work plan for my team of 5? The 5 team members have these titles. Who should hold all of the different pieces? How much time do we need to get these things done? Is the strategic plan too ambitious? Right? Maybe 5 years, we're not going to be able to reinvent our whole tech strategy. It's going to take a little bit longer than that. Right? So ChatGPT can help you see that. It can help build the tools to implement the idea. It doesn't have to give you the idea.
All right. One last thing about that. Can you ask it, how did you make that decision to give me this?
Yes.
Give you the criteria kind of thing? Yeah.
Absolutely. And Victoria, I saw you get excited with the summer intern idea, right? You've probably trained people in your journey. And so that's exactly it. Is like, how did you get there? Show me your work, right? My 9-year-old son right now, you got the right math, you got the question, you got the answer right on the math test. How did you get there? You have to show me your work. I need to understand. And it's the same thing with a small query in ChatGPT. If you're looking at adopting a tool, go to that vendor. Hey, I'm a caseworker. I heard that you have this tool, Listen, Lyssen, I believe is how it's spelled. Caseworkers are exploring it. Magic School. If you're a teacher, there's a tool called Magic School. It can help develop curriculums and support plans for your students. You can ask those vendors, please help me understand how this thing works. And if they can't explain it to you, maybe be a little apprehensive about that. Just because it's AI and an algorithm doesn't mean it's completely inexplicable, right? It's complicated, it's complex. There's a lot of complexity in there. It should still come out in layperson terms so you can say, okay, this sounds okay, or no, thank you, I'm not touching that. Eileen, please.
Hi, this is so cool. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Gathering Ground, for having this. This is so cool. So anyway, this might be a really stupid question, but I remember listening to whatever the CEO's name of Google is, right when Bard came out, which is now Gemini. And he had said, like you said, they ate the internet. Well, he had said they've read the internet, but only up to 2021. Is that true? I mean, is there like a time limit?
Yep. And so back to like again, think like building a model. Think of it analog if that helps, right? They had to build the model. And that meant at some point, like all the pieces, right? All the internet was on the table and they had to build the thing. They had all of the pieces up until 2022 for a certain model. And then they took that model and they're like, oh, it's 2024. Let me add some more pieces on. And then if you pay for, the highest end one, it's getting updated more regularly and in real time. So yes, some of the free versions, they stopped. They were like, cool, we built it, we did it. And if you want to get the newest stuff, you're going to have to pay, right? Again, ROI, return on investment, they need to make their money. So the free versions, I actually taught on for a whole year. I spent a year on the free versions because I wanted to make sure I was teaching you the tools that you had access to for free. It got to a point where I was like, okay, $20 a month. I think it's time to take that step. But you all should be fine on the free versions for a while. You're just dipping your toes in. You're starting to practice. I think Microsoft came out with, if you practice for 11 minutes a day, you will become an expert. So if you can find 11 minutes, one of my favorite use cases when I was starting out was I was going on a family vacation. 2 small children, it's a lot of work to figure out what we're going to do all day long. And so I was on TripAdvisor and I was in Expedia and I was on all of these different tools. And I was like, I bet you this is a good use case for ChatGPT. And I popped in and I said, going on vacation with my children for a week in this location. I would love to have some ideas for lunch. I would love to have some inexpensive kid-friendly dinner ideas and, take us all over the place to all the different kid-friendly venues. 30 seconds later, it spit out a 7-day itinerary, as opposed to me like swimming all over the internet trying to pull it together myself. So again, start with the easy cases. There was another person, he had spent 42 years at the EPA. He's like, I am very competent professionally. I don't know what this tool could possibly do for me. And I was like, okay, let's not think professionally. What in your personal life are you interested in? Electric trains in California. It's like, okay, let's give that a try. Went to ChatGPT. I said, what's going on with the adoption of electric trains in California? What's the latest policy update? Which senators are interested in this? Where should, this 42-year veteran of the EPA step in to lend his voice to this conversation? It was all right there. He could have built out a 12-month work plan and said, okay, who do I call? When do I call them? When are the meetings? And ChatGPT, again, zone of genius. I can't verify, like, is that event happening in Vegas in November? I would have to click the buttons to find out. If he's up on that stuff, he knows. He's like, oh yeah, they meet in November every year, of course. Right? So that's the benefit of staying close to your zone of genius. He knows it. He knows the electric train world. I don't. And so as there are things you're curious about, that's a great way to spend your 11 minutes. Another one was you're coming to New York City for a week. You're really interested in the medieval arts. Can you create me, my own learning curriculum for my week in New York City to explore the best of medieval arts in the city? Make sure you include which subway lines and lunch spots and, do I need an Uber or a bus? And it puts it all together for you. Again, fact check it. Don't, stand out on 42nd Street waiting for a bus that was discontinued 2 years ago, right? Like do your due diligence, but you have a much further along starting point than you would otherwise.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Rachel, we do have a couple of other questions, but I know that you also want to kind of move through the rest of the presentation, so we can circle back to those as well.
Yeah, and again, I can take questions offline, right? Like email. I'm happy to, compile those and, respond to as many as I can if I don't get to them today, Casey. So applications, right? We went through some of the efficiency that we personally can develop for ourselves, right? Our own daily work. We can build our own efficiency. We can also start looking towards engagement. How do we work with our partners and collaborators to drive our mission forward? And that could be practicing a conversation that you're going to have with your board. It could be building a chat bot to help answer frequently asked questions of your volunteer teams that, they come every month. They always ask the same questions about parking. Let's just build a chat bot that can answer those so they don't end up in my team member's inbox, right? How do we start to move the workload to places that make sense? And then the future is collaboration. How do we work together on these tools? And that's where things get really exciting. And so Habitat for Humanity actually did automated matching of volunteers. So they had their 5,000 person list of volunteers, and then they have events all the time, all over the country. And so let's not blast all 5,000 volunteers every time there's an opportunity. Let's segment the data. Let's work with AI to do matching. You're interested in this issue area, you're in that region, and you're available on Saturdays. Let's send you that invitation instead of the 5,000 person list. Again, we could do that manually, but these tools can make it happen a lot faster, and you can build in automations so that it's very automated as opposed to having to go through the spreadsheet and code something and say, okay, reach out to these 5. So that's the benefit of this tool, and it's an accelerant, remembering that it's going to speed things up. And so being really cautious. So one of the examples that came up recently was using recording tools on grantee phone calls. It was funders. And the funders had decided, yes, let's move ahead with this. It'll make it faster for us to analyze, grantee insight if we have a transcript. That benefits the internal funder. That benefits the program officer. They didn't think about how their grantee partner was going to feel showing up and being told, we're going to record this for our data extraction purposes, right? So you can kind of see that power privilege dynamic at play. If we'd been thoughtful about it, we could have said, this is what we're planning to do. Could you please, sign off on it before you enter the meeting so that we are, being clear and explicit about what's happening before you show up at the meeting and we've already made decisions about the tools we're using. Why this keeps getting stuck on me. There we go. In the interest of time, I'm going to have you just pop into the chat in 3 words. How do you feel about your use of the use of AI in your work? Oh, and I see Jonathan's already going for the QR code. So I'll leave it up. Casey, if you want to pop it in, I will go for it. Don't put it in the chat. Go right to this QR code. You guys are fantastic technologists. I'm already very impressed. And so everyone's got the Q.
While folks are doing that, Rachel, there have been a few comments in the chat saying, like, I have moral quandaries over the environmental cost every time I work in ChatGPT or another tech platform. So that's definitely one of the threads and one of the things that we're seeing from this group.
Yes. And so that was one of the deep dives I did with ChatGPT, right? Again, you have an interest area, you have something that you want to learn about. For me, it was around that climate issue. And I'm an environmentalist. I have cared about these things for a very long time. And so one of the parallels that I bring to the conversation is around, sorry, I'm looking for an article, guys. My apologies. So let me activate this one. You distracted me with the climate change, Casey. So here it is. Now it's activated. You guys can put your votes in now. Here's back to the QR code really quickly if anyone missed that. And then I'm just gonna go back to that. Let's see, maybe if I pull it out. So there's an article that I wrote, and that's what I'm searching for at the moment for you all with climate concerns. And I wrote it in partnership with a tool called Notebook LM. And that tool is another technology tool that facilitates the synthesis of research, right? So I was able to pull in all of these different pieces of information and have ChatGPT help me digest it and then come up with, kind of some recommendations about, is this bad for the planet or not? The basis of this research was a 2-hour YouTube video that I did not have time to watch. And so that's why I turned to ChatGPT and Notebook LM to help me, because in order to consume all of that and come up with, a good research answer, I didn't have time. And so it was efficiency, it was time saving to be able to use a tool to synthesize that data. Conflicted and excited, no surprises there. And that is usually the conflict that we come into right as I'm going into the ChatGPT demo. And so I'm hoping that the excitement and the conflict stay, because we should be skeptical. We do need to stay alert and aware. There are issues. but it's a very powerful tool. And so back to the climate change concerns, I will also say I do trade-off analysis all the time. Let me stop I know this is a big concern, so let me just give it the attention it deserves. We all use cars. We have a robust car culture, especially in this country. We have done our work to regulate and mitigate the harm to the climate, right? We have emission control. We have a plethora of electric vehicles that have come out. We're looking for solutions to mitigate the climate harm and still maintain our car culture. The same thing is going to happen with AI. Someone recently said what we're doing right now with some of the models, right? The models are massive. We might not need the massive model. We might not just need like this little piece of it that understands social impact and nonprofit really well. Well, guess what? Right now we're using the chainsaw to whittle. It's really ineffective. But this is why we need to join the conversation and say, hey, we care about the climate. I'd rather not use a chainsaw. I'd rather just use the correct size model to do the work that I need to do. Unfortunately, the folks driving the conversation right now are all about profit. And so for them, buy the chainsaw, use the chainsaw, like that's their drive. And that's where we need to come in and advocate for, no, I don't want, the gas guzzling truck. I want the small electric vehicle because I care about the planet. But until we have those options, until we push those conversations, the for-profit folks are just going to keep creating the gas guzzlers and destroying the planet because that's their interest. Our interest is exactly counter to that. That's why our voices need to join this conversation. But yes, everything has an impact and it's all about trade-offs. And so often when I'm doing ChatGPT demos in this space with you all, I will reach a point where I'm like, I'm not going to click the button, right? We've gone far enough in the demonstration. You understand, we built the prompt together. Now you all can go off and figure out, how do I need to use this tool to move my social impact forward, to make it possible for me to run my life with greater efficiency, less stress, less burnout, right? Because that's the other thing we're up against right now. Development directors and fundraisers are completely burnt out. Center for Effective Philanthropy just brought that study to our attention last year. It is a crisis. We have a burnout crisis in the nonprofit sector. And so care of humans, care of planet, all of these things need to get balanced and thought about. But I think most immediately we need to learn, what is this tool capable of? What do we need it to do for our sector? And what kind of regulation would we like to see in place? Any other climate concerns that I have not touched upon? So I was at Philanthropy New York earlier this week, and that came up in conversation also. And climate change is a major concern on the funder side also. And what I said to them was, so if we ignore AI, have we isolated ourselves from the consequences? It's still here. It's still damaging the planet. And so by what I call hiding behind climate change, that's not a strategy, right? That's not a responsible way to approach the AI conversation. And so it's actually an abdication of responsibility, right? So love it or hate it, the tool is here. How do we regulate it? How do we use it in a way that drives social impact forward? And that's what we're going to move to next. And so I'm going to take these questions really quickly, and then I want to get into, how do you actually use this tool? So Jerry and then Yvette.
Well, I was just going to ask you, maybe you're coming to it. Thank you. I see a lot of community development professionals in the room, and we know how to shape the systems that shape our communities, but I have no idea how to engage with the systems to shape AI other than a little pie in the sky said, well, I can understand it and use it. So I think we definitely need to understand what those systems are so that we can more fully advocate and be effective.
Yes, Jerry, so well said. That's what I'm out here doing, right? I'm not teaching because I think it's, the shiniest, most beautiful panacea. I'm out here teaching because it's here and we have to grapple with it. And we're the ones who are going to regulate it and protect our communities. Thank you, Jerry. Yvette. Got it covered? All right. So there's also a couple buckets of tools. We are going to be focusing on generalist tools, but I just wanted to make sure that you understand that Perplexity starts to move into a specialist, especially for research. Grantable, Grammarly, these are all specialist tools, and there's so many of them. Do not get overwhelmed by the specialist tools. For now, we're focusing on those generalist, large language model tools. If you have the privilege of having an integrated tool, that's also a great place to start learning. If you're already using Copilot, if you have Salesforce with Einstein, those are really good places to start experimenting and learning. For today, we're going to look at ChatGPT primarily. Why does this keep not going forward? It's giving me grief. Apologies, guys. It's okay. We'll stop share. Because the next slide is walking through a whole slate of examples. And that means that we can do that verbally and I can take questions from you all. It's not a very pretty slide. You're not missing very much. So I already pointed to the YouTube summary, right? So you can take a YouTube transcript. You don't have 2 hours to watch the actual video, and you can ask ChatGPT to summarize it for you. What's happening in this? Can you tell me? I want to learn about this, but I don't have the time to sit and weed through, hours of content. And you can do that with any sort of content. I do that with articles. If I don't have time to read the article, I'll take the content, I'll take the URL, right? Just that website link, and I'll say, can you summarize this article and give me, 5 bullet point takeaways, and what's the call to action, right? So as a single mom, I don't have a lot of time to sit and read. So that's a really big efficiency saver for me. I don't have time to watch YouTube or listen to podcasts, right? So that's a way that I can have ChatGPT help me consume and digest the information. Oh, thank you so much, Casey.
Might
Appreciate
be
it.
slightly out of date. It's the PDF from a couple days ago, so there might be
Yeah,
other
no,
stuff.
totally fine. And again, technology, so fun sometimes. The number 2 one, the bio for resume writing. This one I love to keep highlighted because you can decide to put in your name, address, and birthday if you feel like putting that into ChatGPT. However, you don't want to put in other people's personally identifying information, right? So you can choose to put in, and this goes back to social media. You can choose to put your children's pictures on social media. Not everybody does that. You can choose to tell everyone you're going on vacation. Some people are still concerned that the robbers may come to their house while they're on vacation. Most of us take pictures and let everyone know we're not at home, right? That norm has changed. But we need to be protective and thoughtful about other people's data. So you can pop your resume in. Don't do that with somebody else's. Job descriptions. Those are publicly available. Anything that's going to be consumed publicly is really safe to put into ChatGPT. You can practice role playing. We talked about that a little bit, and it also takes the heat out, right? So I got a text from my dad, and it was frustrating text. I was like, rah, 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 and I was like, I don't want to argue with him. I don't want to argue with him. I just want to respond to the text. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, I would like to have, a peaceful response to this. I'm feeling a little irritated about these points. Can you help me? ChatGPT created a beautiful response that didn't have any of that emotional heat baked into it. And then there's also the example of being able to prepare an RFP. That's something that you all are doing often and a lot. It doesn't need to write the proposal for you. It can just support your ability to prepare. Am I aligned, right? Do these 2 things align, the RFP and my organizational direction? Can you build a checklist so that I know all of the people who need to be part of the development of this RFP and they know which parts are their responsibility? And then finally, can you help draft it? Hold on just one moment. Got an interruption at the front door.
And folks, while we're waiting for Rachel, oh, she's back. Never mind.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All good.
Another really great one is taking unstructured data. And unstructured data might look like the notes in my notebook. Sorry, you probably can't see that, but it's chicken scratch all over the pages. I will take a picture of my notes and I will say, can you summarize this and help make sense of it? What are the takeaways? What are those next action steps? And that's because I prefer not to use an Otter or a Zoom transcript. I prefer to write my notes, right? That's my preferred working style. I know how my brain works. I know how I like to absorb information. And then I needed to figure out, okay, there's this tool called ChatGPT that might save me a little bit of time from, handwriting and analyzing my own notes. Brilliant. Fantastic use case if that is how your brain works. Curriculum development, that's another, like any kind of framework, right? If you want to create a PowerPoint presentation, if you want to develop a fundraising strategy, right? Anything that requires a comprehensive overview, you can get ChatGPT to help you with. Proofreading, that's great for people who might not speak English as a first language, right? So there's also this power privilege dynamic. Like, we don't want you to use ChatGPT. Well, it really helps me sound professional because I don't speak English as a first language, and that's the expectation. So be aware of that power privilege dynamic of what's in and what's out. Who's allowed to use it, who's not allowed to use it. And this last one is going back to the role play idea where you can practice before you go into those conversations. So if you have to discuss something with a team member, if you need to have an uncomfortable conversation with your board, you can use ChatGPT to help you practice. You can use it to help onboard, right? I need to onboard somebody. Can you help me build an onboard training plan? What pieces do we need to hit on? Oh, constructing annual budgets. Yvette, that's a great one. Anytime you have a blank sheet of paper and it's more than just what's the capital of the United States, right? If it's not a transactional one-off answer, ChatGPT is what you want to be thinking about using. Okay, next slide, Casey, please. And so this is an example specifically around fundraising. And what this one is pointing to is some of the other opportunities specifically within the fundraising realm of what you could be doing with ChatGPT. So research and alignment for funding opportunities. That's a huge one because, again, you get a 30-page government RFP. You don't want to spend 3 days reading it and deciding if you're even eligible. So you could say, ChatGPT, here is the website address for my organization. Here is the RFP. You upload the RFP and you say, are we aligned? Social media sentiment analysis. If you are tracking data, if you get your Google Analytics, you could ask ChatGPT to help you see which posts performed really well. Who loved it? Who loved this post? What was there in that post? Can we replicate it? Can we make another one similar to this post and add the content from this article, right? This information just came out. It's relevant to our issue area. This post did really, really well. How do we put these two things together? Pilar, I don't have a list of prompts, but we're going to go into some prompt engineering next. So Casey next, and we're going to move a little bit quicker right into the Oh, and here's another case. I'm not going to walk through this case. I talked about Habitat for Humanity a little bit. Donor Search is also doing some cool work. I have kind of bullet points here. You could ask ChatGPT, tell me more about the donor targeting that Donor Search is doing. ChatGPT will pull together a beautiful digest for you. Okay, next slide. And this is one of the most important slides. This is the 4 things I think you must think about before you do anything large language model AI related: ethics, privacy, security, and data. I'm not going to say a lot more about that because I want to get to the demo, but those are the 4 pieces anytime you're doing anything, right? So back to that, Otter AI is running and you're meeting with your grantee partner and you're a funder. Well, we've just made some, ethical missteps and jeopardized grantee privacy because maybe they don't want to be recorded, right? So there's 2 misses right there. What's happening with the data? Did you tell the grantee what you're doing with that transcript? Is it secure? Or did you just drop it into, Dropbox where anybody at your organization get access to it, right? So those 4 pieces you need to be thinking about really critically and really carefully as you do any enterprise level institutional work with ChatGPT. Okay, let's go to the next one, but I think we're going to the demo. We're going to the demo. And so this is my prompt to you all, is to start thinking about how could you be using generative AI in your work. If anyone is brave enough to come off mute, we are going to walk through right here, this anatomy of a prompt. So a prompt, you want to give as much context as you can. That can be uploading documents, that could be talking about, why this case matters, who your audience is, what format you need it in, and what role you want ChatGPT to play, right? So for example, I want you to play the board member on the finance committee who's always asking really hard questions about our audited financial statements. Those audited financial statements might be already publicly available on your website. It's okay to put that into ChatGPT and do some role play practice. What is this board member going to ask me? Ask me the really hard questions. Look at this audit and tell me, what is the board member going to come at me with? And you can practice. So telling ChatGPT the role that you need it to play ensures that you're getting the answers that you require. Okay, so I think you can stop sharing, Casey, and I'm going to take over again with a ChatGPT share. And we are going to go into a prompt. So if anyone is feeling brave enough to come off of mute, I am happy to walk through an example with you all. And these are some of the examples that I've done in other teaching classes. So grant compliance revision, right? Like, is this compliant? Can you help me review it? When you're going out on PTO leave, you might want to create a checklist, right? Can somebody else pick these things up while I'm out for a week? You can build the checklist here. Global HR operations. There was an update in India. I need to make sure that our HR manual reflects that. Like, I don't work in India that often, but I know that I have to be compliant. Can you help me out? Volunteer recruitment for events, making a itinerary, conflict resolution, wellness planning. This was the medieval New York City tour, right? Like, let me go see what there is to see. Mammals of Africa curriculum. So runs the gamut of opportunities of different prompts we can create. So the first thing we're going to do with our prompt today, again, if anyone is feeling brave enough to come off of mute, we are going to create our persona. That's the first. Who do we need ChatGPT to be today?
I see Yvette has her hand raised. So Yvette, you've got a.
Does someone else
Yes.
have? Oh, okay, great. Okay.
Are you gonna
Yeah, sure.
go for it?
Okay. So what would you like this ChatGPT to pretend to be today for you? You're asking your intern. I need you to.
I need you to give me more information about the burnout and staffing shortages in the nonprofit sector.
Okay. And so is this an executive director of a nonprofit? Pretend you are
Yes.
the ED. What kind of nonprofit?
No. I want to be a foundation.
Ooh, pretend you are a
I'm a foundation
foundation.
trying to figure out how to support nonprofits in this very challenging time, working with the administration, with the White House. I don't know.
Okay. Also, it's kind of neat that ChatGPT doesn't care if you misspell because it's all logic. So in the spirit of efficiency, I try really hard not to go back and like edit myself, right? And so that's what we're driving towards when we talk about efficiency, is like, this does not have to be beautiful or complete. It's just about getting some words down about something that you need. Again, back to the day, if you're jotting a note to your assistant, like, I need you to do this. I'm on phone calls all day. Like, get that done and let me know when it's done. So you're a foundation executive. Let's give it a persona as opposed to a institution.
Yes.
Executive that wants to support nonprofits in this challenging moment. We understand the context of the U.S. federal government. And so we have, again, back to the different pieces that we like to make sure are included, is we want to have, bear with me here. Context, role, audience, deliverable. So who is your audience? Who do we want to develop this for?
We're developing it for the National Foundation community. We're a foundation leader.
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And the more you give it, right, you're helping it understand, like, how do you want it to speak? Who are you speaking to? And then I
Mhm.
put this here, this is the format, right? A memo. We want a memo, right? And so we could get more robust. We could say a table, an Excel spreadsheet, a ecosystem map. Like the world is your oyster when you're talking about what format do you want it delivered in. Again, just
So,
like you're talking to that intern. Mhm.
so Rachel, I have a question. So then should I even be more clear and actually say from the, what is the daily thing that we're getting that are getting signed? Executive orders.
Yep.
Because it's not just the federal government, it's the current executive orders from January 20 of 2025.
Okay. So this one, if you had like a strategic plan or a URL or some supporting documents, this is where you would add that.
Wait,
And I
go back to
wouldn't worry too much. These other icons, I pay
Mhm.
very little attention to, right? I'm a researcher, I'm an academic. I don't really get into, creating images. I'm not doing deep research. Again, that's like an even bigger chainsaw, right? The content that it can draw from is even bigger. By giving the ChatGPT the persona, a foundation executive, we're drilling down into the world and language that we want ChatGPT to respond with, right? So if I said, you're an engineer at Samsung, if I said you are a nonprofit development assistant, right? You're going to get different outputs and you're kind of narrowing the focus, the language, the tone by giving it a persona. So that's why that's really helpful. The context then allows you to provide information about what you need, why you need it. So you're helping your assistant, your little summer intern understand where are we going? And then finally, what format do you want it in? And then often before you begin, ask 3 clarifying questions. Whoa, getting really bad here. And then I just hit enter. And so now it's chatting with me. And the reason I ask for 3, like, when have you ever sent your intern off and it comes back with something and you're like, that is not what I asked for at all. Like, I don't know how we miscommunicated, but you did not understand what I was asking for. And so including the clarifying questions allows you to kind of make sure that you're on the same page, right? Like, are we understanding each other? And so that has been really, really helpful. The other prompt that I really love to include at some point in this conversation is as you're drafting the memo, at this point, maybe this looks good, you're going to copy it, you're going to take it over to your Word document, and you're going to start putting in your language and your flair, right? We're not done. We're far from done. We just got off the blank sheet of paper. And so here are clarifying questions. Should we attempt to answer those, Yvette?
Sure.
So what I usually do is I just put the number 1 and I'll
Yep.
answer.
1 is internal.
Yep.
2 is which specific one? Okay. Anybody got an answer for that one? Because I got nothing. There.
Yeah, it
Well,
gives us an option of high level. So we'll just stay high level with that
there you
one.
go. Let's do direct grant making.
Okay. And so again, just like chatting with a human, here's the questions and here's the answers, right? Like I don't need to write a small essay for it. It understands where we're going. And then based on your answers, it's going to draft a confidential internal memo for National Foundation that frames the current nonprofit burnout, offers high-level context, and proposes direct grant making strategies. So you can see how if you haven't fact checked, right? Say there was an executive order 3.5 that came out this morning, you didn't fact check it. There is no executive order 3.5. And now you have this confidential memo that's ready to go to all your friends. That's why you have to start with the fact check, right? So when you're bringing information in here, ChatGPT may not catch that executive order 3.5 is not a real thing. You need to catch that, right? That's where your brilliance, your judgment, your expertise, your ecosystem of knowledge finding and knowledge checking has to be in place before or during your use of this tool. Okay, and so now we have a memo. Look at this, so fast. Burnout is no longer an isolated HR issue. It's a systemic threat to service delivery, equity work, and the resilience of our civil society. I'm fired up. I don't know about you guys. We can also ask it to adjust the tone, right? So Yvette, let's assume there's something you really don't like about this tone and just pick a completely left-hand turn from this. This is rather academic and professional.
That's okay. Why don't we open it up? Someone look at
Yes.
it and come up with something.
Great idea. Thank you. So collaborative. I love this group.
Yeah, I'm the afternoon.
So let's do a tone where I have to make this argument around the dinner table with my family who doesn't understand my sector.
Perfect.
Write a script for me to use to explain this to my grandma. My grandma was very conservative. This would have been really useful back in the day to help her understand why something like Obamacare was so important to me personally. She just could not get her head wrapped around it. And I was like, I don't have insurance if this doesn't happen, right? So, being able to find the words. And so here we are talking to Grandma about nonprofit staffing crisis. Grandma, I work with nonprofits. Of course, you help them do their jobs well. Exactly. Well, now they're struggling, like really struggling. A lot of the staff are burnt out. That sounds awful. It's a big worry. Sounds like they're getting whiplash. Exactly. So we're trying to talk to other big funders. Pretty neat, huh? Now, write the memo at a I cannot spell this time of day. I'm sorry, guys. 3rd grade reading level for my son to review. So what I'm demonstrating here is how easy it is to shift audiences. And we're using kind of some silly examples here, grandma, my son, but you could imagine you have a strategic plan. You're able to come right here, upload your strategic plan, which if it lives on your website, it's publicly available, right? Anyone has access to it. So you upload your strategic plan. I want to present this plan to my nonprofit partners. I want to present this plan to the homeless in the community that we're going to be serving. I want to present this plan to the finance committee of my board, and I want to make sure that they understand why we need an extra $1 million investment in this project this year, right? So ChatGPT can help you shift the language and then also shift the way you present it. Because I could also say, now build me a slide deck for grandma. It's going to be a very different slide deck than the slide deck I'd say, build me that slide deck now for my son.
Right.
And so that's one of the biggest efficiencies with this tool is being able to take the same content, that same strategic plan, and say, now I need to present it to different audiences.
Rachel, I'm thinking about those of us who work with communities where English is not their first language, and the use of ChatGPT when we're talking about non-English speakers. Or again, that English is not first language.
Again, zone of genius. I can't check this, but I'm sure there's some Spanish speakers on the call. And again, I don't know how far the languages go, but I know that this tool has been incredibly helpful for folks who, here, I'll give you a story. Here's a fantastic story to wrap on. And I'm going to drop the share screen because I think we did a little bit of a demo here. You kind of get, the lay of the land. There's so much more to explore. That's why your 11 minutes of practice is so important. There was a woman who worked for a for-profit. She kept getting looked over for promotion. Sorry, it's beautiful and sunny here in New York today, and the sun is setting right in front of me, so apologies. She was not getting promoted. ChatGPT came out. She started popping her emails into ChatGPT and saying, please write like my other colleagues. Please write like my boss. Please write like a professional PhD academic who has all of the language and all of the words and all of the shine that I don't have in written format, right? She may have had it everywhere else, but in written format, it did not come through. She made that shift to using ChatGPT. She got promoted. So when we talk about this tool as an equity leveler, like there is incredible applicability to us being able to drive our desire to have equity baked in using this tool. It can also create divides, right? We know about the digital divide. We know not everyone has access to these tools, especially not an enterprise level. And so, right, unfortunately, dominant culture norms. Thank you, Casey. And so using this tool is really complicated because there's power, there's privilege, there's harm, and there's, potential. And that's why we have to get in there and we have to figure out what can this do for us, with us, by us, instead of being given whatever the for-profit world has decided works for them. And you will get a copy of the slide deck. I finish up with some notes on just how to be doing this responsibly. Erasure, exactly. If that data isn't there, you're not seen. If your language isn't supported by ChatGPT, what's happening? And so in Kenya, Swahili has really driven ahead in being able to be a language that is used as a new technological foundation, right? So English and Swahili. More Googling to do, more research for me to do, but check it out. I'm pretty sure Kenya, because again, here's another ethical conundrum. Many of the training that happened in this tool was using workers from Africa to review and train. So again, another ethical conundrum, but it's here. It happened. It's done. How do we now lean in and say, we're not doing it that way? That is not the way we approach these tools, and to use our voices to make sure that there is regulation and care of our communities and equity built in at the beginning. Thank you so much, all. I hope I answered at least a few of your questions, and I know Casey will be sending me some more from the chat. And thank you for joining today. I appreciate you all so much for being willing and stepping into this conversation.
Thank you, Rachel. We're right at time, which just indicates I know there's so much more that we want to ask and so much more that we can learn from. And it's just an indication that this field is constantly changing, growing, and we always want to learn and need to learn more. So thank you, Rachel, for being with us today, for sharing your insights and sparking some thoughtful conversations. If you want to, we'll drop in Rachel's information, ways to connect with her in the chat, and we ask for you to connect with us, sign up for our newsletter, check out our programming calendar so you can stay connected and learn about all of our upcoming exciting events. We have a ton happening in May, and we hope you join us for those as well. And let us know what you thought of today's briefing. Send us an email. I hope Anaya's putting all that stuff in the chat box for you. And thanks for being with us today and sharing all this knowledge with us. Have a great day.
Please do let us know if you want to do more of this, because if you do, we will figure out a way to make that happen. We know how important this is. We're so grateful to Rachel. And I do just have to shout out the Council of New Jersey Grantmakers, which is where we first met Rachel.
That's right.
At their policy forum last August. And ever since that moment, we've been trying to figure out a way to get her in these doors. So just grateful to you, Rachel, for being with us today, and to all of you for being here. So please do let us know if this is good topics. You want to keep doing a deep dive, we'll figure that out.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.